In this video, we're going to be opening up RStudio now. So at this point, you should either have R and RStudio installed on your personal computer, or you should have an account with RStudio Cloud, in which case you can also kind of follow along with the same things here that we'll be doing in RStudio on the computer. So the first step is to either open up RStudio Cloud in the web version or to find it on your computer, which is what most of you are probably doing. So you can just go here to your search and type in RStudio, and it's going to look like this. And just be careful that you don't open up just a base R, which is going to look like this. And if I open it, it looks like this. So if you see this, you're in the wrong place. Go ahead and close that out. RStudio is much more user-friendly. It's going to have kind of some windows here and some features that make this a lot easier. And let me actually close this. So when you first open this up, it's going to look like this. You're going to see a big kind of console window on your left side. And I'll talk about these in just a second. But let's kind of start over here. This is where you can directly type and run code. So if I wanted to just run something real quick, I can do that here by typing it in and clicking enter. So maybe like 2 plus 2, and then I can click enter and I get 4. But this is not the easiest way to write code because this kind of forces you to run all of your code as you go. You can't really edit your code. You can't save your code that easily. What you want to do is instead open up a text editor. So in our case in RStudio, you can go up here to this icon and choose RScript. And that's going to create this text editor for you that is much more user-friendly for writing and saving code. Okay, so I can do the same things here. However, I already saved my RScript, which you can do, by the way. You can click the Save button and save it as a file on your computer. I already have an RScript that I worked on a little bit earlier, and I'm just going to navigate over to that. So this over here can function for many different things, but the first option here is your Files pane. This is kind of the link into your computer's library. If you're on RStudio Cloud, it's just going to be whatever files you've pulled into your web-based version, so it's not going to link into your computer. You're just going to have to manually upload files and things into your Files pane there. But otherwise, this is a link into your computer. You can kind of navigate back up a step or down a step by clicking into a file, and I'm going to open up this script right here that I already prepared earlier. Okay. So you'll notice that I have some code here already. So code's going to be just kind of in these more normal colors. These things in green are just comments, meaning that that if you put these, I guess we call them hashtags now or pound signs, in front of something, you can't accidentally highlight it and run it. Like nothing is going to output from that. Whereas if I highlight this and run it, this would actually do something. So that's why we have these little comments throughout our scripts. It's just to kind of organize our script and make it such that we don't run this and get an error if R tries to read just some words and letters and doesn't know what to do with that. So that kind of helps with that. So again, R is a calculator. We already saw this. And if I type this into a script, I can just put my cursor at the end of the line or really anywhere in here, or I can highlight it and I can run that, which is really nice. And I can separate that from maybe some other calculations or code that maybe I don't want to run it at the same time, so I can just run this separately, or I can highlight all of it and I can run both of these together at the same time. Okay, so R can do more than just calculations. I can also kind of create and save objects to my global environment, which right now there's nothing in here. I haven't defined anything, and I don't have anything defined from my previous session. So I'm going to define some values here. So maybe, just for a demonstration, let's say that A is going to be set to 10. So that means that anytime I reference A, either by itself or in some other formula, it's going to substitute in 10. And maybe I have, maybe what I want to do, I'll kind of demonstrate this with like the area of a triangle. Let's do so here's the formula for a triangle, and I have two variables kind of substituted in, base and height. And if I don't have base and height already defined, then I'm going to get an error trying to run this because R doesn't know what base is. But if I go ahead and define base and height in my global environment, now R knows what these are. So if you ever see this error message in R, like that something is not found, it means that this is either not in your global environment or it does not have any inherent meaning in R by itself as something. So it means that most likely you probably just didn't define something correctly, that you didn't upload your data, that you're not calling on the variable name correctly that you're trying to reference. So always kind of check your global environment as a good habit whenever something gives you an error that something is not found. So these are just singular values, but I can also define vectors, or if we're working with data, we'd probably call them variables. That maybe I have a heights variable and I have some data on some different people representing their heights. So I can define that here as a variable all on its own. More commonly though, you're going to see variables inside of data frames. So I'm going to define a data frame real quick, and you're going to notice that this is going to look a little bit different. Now I just see, in this case I called it df, and this is a data frame that has two variables in it. It has heights and weights, and each row is kind of like one person, right? So I don't see heights and weights here as their own things. In fact, something I want to do here, I'm going to clear my global environment with that broom, and I'm going to just define this data frame by itself so that we don't have any redundancy here with heights as a vector all on its own as well. So now, if I were to try to call on heights all by itself, I'm going to get an error. It's not going to know what heights is, and that's because heights is within the name structure that I already have. So df is defined. If I run df, R knows what that is. So if I want to get to heights, I have to do heights $, and you're going to see it come up automatically, either heights or weights, if I want to reference just that particular variable. So that's really helpful if you're using functions, like maybe you're trying to find the mean of the heights variable. I can do that here, and I just have to make sure that I'm referencing the variable through the $sign function. Same with this summary function, by the way. Summary does work on the whole data frame. If I just do summary of the data frame, I'm going to get all the variable summaries listed separately, or I could choose one particular variable and get the summary of just that variable. So that functionality is really important, and again, it all comes down to how it's defined in your global environment, that you can define things either as individual values, as a set of values, or as a set of vectors or set of variables that you'd have to kind of identify through the data frame name there. Okay, so I think that covers all the functionality here. I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you like keyboard shortcuts, Control Enter, or if you're on a Mac, Command Enter allows you to run code without actually having to click. So if you like to just use your keyboard, you can do that. You can also find keyboard shortcuts. I forget where you find that. It's probably through Tools or something. Modify keyboard. Yeah, so I think you can go here and look up all the different keyboard shortcuts that may or may not be interesting to you. But if you're that person, go for it. I also want to talk about global options. So if you go up here to Tools, go down here to Global Options, I would just encourage you to uncheck any of these boxes right here. These other ones are probably okay, but these I'd go ahead and encourage you to uncheck, and also go ahead and set this to never. That's just going to save you some time whenever you exit or enter R, that it's going to ask you a couple things. It's going to ask you if you want to do this or save that, and the answer is really never. You are probably going to need to do any of that. So I'd recommend that you just set all this to how I have it here. If you want to set, let me move this over here. So with your file pane over here, if you want to set this to open up one particular folder on your computer by default, you can do that here. You can click Browse and choose a folder on your computer if you want to just kind of make that where you save all of your data or where you save all of your scripts or projects that you want to use for R. Feel free to change that default here. And then finally, if you would like to change your appearance, you can do things here. You can change your editor theme. So if you like maybe a dark color palette or just another color palette in general, you can do that here. I usually just use the default, but you're free to change that. All right, so that should wrap up this video. Hope that was helpful.